Okay, it's recording now.
Okay.
Did you send to Kathleen Reby or check
I
with her?
texted her. Doug will email it to you. I said
She should have gotten it by now, so hopefully she's able to get in.
usually gets in. She teaches technology. She's a technology specialist.
I'm gonna go grab my phone because I just noticed I don't have it right here. I want to make sure I can get texts in case people text me.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and start. I would like to welcome everyone to the Region 19 Legislative Forum. I'm Marci Muszynski. I'm the PTA Legislative Vice President for Region 19, and I will be conducting this evening. First, I'd like to thank the legislators for taking time out of their busy schedules to come to this meeting, and also Janet Cannon, who's come from the state school board. I'd like to thank them all for taking this extra time to come today to speak to us. I would also like to thank the participants that have joined us today for this session, because everyone has busy schedules and it's so hard to get to everything. And I'd like to thank you for coming. But before we start this evening, I'm going to turn some time over to Jeannette Bowen, who has some PTA announcements.
Okay, thanks, Marci. I will be brief. Being the region PTA director and having PTA be the tool that we put this together tonight, I of course am going to do a quick plug for PTA. I'm sure our representatives can attest that the PTA is very, very much involved in this legislative session that happens. They spend hours and hours and hours up on the Hill. And as PTA members in our local schools, we really can have a lot of voice and a lot of say in how bills pass and go. And just as a heads up, as the legislative session gets started, if you reference the UtahPTA.org website, you'll be able to follow bills that the PTA is following, whether they're opposing them or whether they're supporting them. There's also, you can anticipate PTA Day at the Capitol. Always happens one of the days in February, and we will push that information out as we get the details for that. I'm also going to, for our parents that are on here right now and our parents that will watch later, I'm going to share my screen really briefly and show you, we would love to have your help in PTA. And let's see if I can. Of course, it's not popping up, which I knew it would probably do this. So let's see here. Let me try one more time. If not, let me just explain how you can get on and support your school's PTA. You have incredible PTA presidents. If you go to our murrayschools.org website and click under the parents tab, if you scroll down there, you'll see the PTA, PTESA tab. And under there, there's some great resources. We try to keep our parents in the know. One really great highlight is there's a suicide prevention toolkit there. And if anybody that you know or that ever needs any sort of resources, that's a great toolkit with phone numbers and websites and tools that you can use to help in that situation. It's also a place where you can find your local school's PTA store where you can go on, you can make a donation, and most especially too, you can become a member of your local school's PTA. You can have whatever level of involvement you would like. If you want just communication, that's great. If you want to serve on committees, that's great. But we do need your numbers. We want voices for our kids in PTA, which ultimately leads to voices of our lawmakers. And we appreciate your support. We look forward to having another virtual night in just several weeks. We're going to have a magician for the children. So watch for that. But anyway, okay. Thank you so much, Marci. I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thank you, Jeannette. We will now begin our legislative night by reminding you that sometimes we have different opinions than other people on different issues, and we need to be respectful as we listen to other people's views this night. And if you have any questions during this legislative forum, please send your questions through the chat. Doug Perry from the district and Jeannette Bowen, the region PTA president, will monitor those in the chat, and they will, if we have time at the end, they'll, we will bring them up. If not, we'll make sure that you are answered by email or something. We will make sure your questions are answered. So now we will hear from the legislators and what bills they're bringing to the legislative session in 2022. First, we'll start with Senator Reedy, and then we'll have, if Senator Davis gets on, we'll have him next. He's having complications also getting on. And we're going to Senior Senator Iwamoto was unable to come tonight, so we will skip over her, and then we will go to Representative Moss and then Representative Bennion. So we will go to that point. Senator Reedy.
Good evening. Thanks you everyone for being here today. It's so exciting to have engaged parents, and I'm a senator from Cottonwood Heights, Midvale, Murray area, and I represent teachers, I think, more effectively than some of our other senators and legislators because I'm in the classroom still. I've worked all across the whole entire Salt Lake Valley, and I've worked in many districts across the country, which is kind of fun as well. I am running legislation this year to try to increase nurses in our schools because I think that the number of nurses to student ratio is kind of abysmal. And actually during this pandemic, it's super important that we had nurses and people to rely on to give us really good information. I'm also running a bill trying to help bring some more social workers and grow our own social workers. So it's a program where people who are working through that program can actually go through it quicker and have some funding behind it. I'm also running other bills that aren't really school related, but safety in our neighborhoods. So Kathleen Wiebe, Senate District 8 and school teacher and senator. Thanks.
Am I next?
Yes, go ahead, since Senator Davis didn't get on yet.
So I'm next. Okay. Well, good evening. I'm happy to be here. Carol Spackman Moss. I represent Holiday and Murray. After the last redistricting 10 years ago, I got this big section of Murray, and I was just delighted because our first home was in Murray on Anderson Avenue. My daughters went to Riverview Elementary until the 4th grade. But because I had a teaching job at Olympus High, I wanted to live in Holiday. So we found a home in Holiday, and I've lived here ever since. But I have a lot of family in Murray and many former students. So my reason for running initially was education, and it still is very, very important to me. I didn't feel like the representative before me was a good advocate. And by the way, I taught most of Janet Cannon's kids and my own daughters, one of whom is now an English teacher at Skyline. So she learned nothing from watching me grade papers every night. But anyway, so I'm always working on advocating for education, improved funding, and a lot of time it's just stopping bad policies. And believe me, in the last year or so, we've had some really bad policies proposed. Not all have passed, but there have been some bad ones. So Senator Reeby and I are both on the Education Committee, thankfully. So we do speak from years of classroom experience. One bill I'm running this year that I ran last year, but I'm working on it again. It would be to expand the health education curriculum. So kids starting with 7th grade, and then when they take health education in high school again, would get some instruction and training on measures to prevent them from experiencing sexual violence or assault. Teachers would talk about coercion, grooming, emotional manipulation, all those things that kids naively many times fall into. Utah has a terrible rate, really, of sexual violence against girls and women. Sadly, 1 in 3 girls, and this is from the Utah Public Health Department, will be assaulted or have some kind of sexual violence, and 1 in 6 men boys and men. So that's a very important bill to me, because kids need to be armed with knowledge. We need to protect them and prevent them from that kind of violence. And with social media, you know yourselves that it's really the Wild West out there, and we have to protect kids. I have another bill that would trigger in contentious divorces. Right now, when you get divorced in Utah, if you have children, or if you have to take a course, divorce education, it's online or in person. And to really, if you have children, to focus on the effect of divorce and how you can avoid causing any more emotional turmoil among kids. But I've been approached by some people who want something for when there's contentious divorces and there are changes of custody, like fights over custody time, you know, changing the custody arrangements, changing, you know, things like child support, and you know how ugly it can get. So this would automatically, if there were some change in those kind of provisions, it would automatically trigger a requirement to take kind of a refresher course, but they're very well done. They're excellent to remind parents about the effect of that kind of contention on kids. So I have some others, but I'll just stop there because I don't want to take too much time.
All right, thank you. Senator Davis showed up, so we'll go ahead to him next.
Thank you. Good evening. First of all, if I might, I'd like to send greetings and an apology from Senator Janie Iamoto. She thought it was last night and she booked other things around for this evening. And so she apologizes for not being able to attend this evening's meeting. I've been working on the redistricting committee, and so I don't have a lot of legislation in the pipeline. I know there's a lot of concerns, especially in education, about COVID and the masks and those issues regarding that, as well as really making school better for children. Those are the things I'll be working on, making sure that we do have the appropriate amount of funding going into the schools. I'll be working on that as well. So that's about what I have, because all my time is being taken right now by redistricting, my focus.
All right, Representative Bennion, sorry.
That's okay. I don't know if I've spoken with you all, or if I have, maybe some of you are new, and I am new to the legislature. So in the email, it said I could briefly introduce myself. So I'll do that. I grew up here in Utah, but my husband served 26 years with the Air Force. So we've only been back in Utah for 9 years now. And I was very fortunate when we moved back here. I joined Women's State Legislative Council, and that is a bipartisan 101-year-old women's organization in our state that focuses on the legislature and meets at the Capitol and follows important bills. And I served in leadership there and came to understand our legislature, and that's why I was ready to run for this office. And one of the people that most impacted me when I joined that organization is actually a past state PTA president, Joanne Nielsen. And one of the first committee meetings I attended was with her, and it was at Natural Resources, and the committee was recognizing her for the impact that she made. She was one of the leaders that changed SITLA so that it is a separate organization and started bringing in a lot more funds because it wasn't directly overseen by the legislature itself. So I have seen firsthand the amazing impacts that PTA has and how needed PTA is in our state. And I've seen that around the country as our children attended outside of Utah also, public schools. I serve on natural resources and political subdivisions. I do not serve on education. I have spent some time this summer learning about early education, and I've tried to help give input on where to spend some of the extra funds that we have for early education because of the federal funding from ARPA. I am working on water issues and learning all I can about water. We have a wonderful institution in the Department of Natural Resources called the Watershed Restoration Initiative. It is 16 years old, and it is a one of a kind in the nation. And it collaborates our federal agencies and our state agencies and private organizations and people to work on lands to help reduce fire risk in our wildlands, and also to work on watershed to make the water better quality. Some of the things they're using are, I'm going to forget the name now, beaver dam analogs, which is kind of like a man-made beaver dam to help our water not be in deep rivers that have a lot of erosion, but to have them be more natural as they used to be because of the beavers, where they're more widespread and more fish and things can grow easily. So I have a bill to put that division into our state code. We have a great department at the state level, the auditors, and they look at divisions and departments, including education, and give audits of how things could run better. And they've been asking that this be put into code. Right now, it's just funded. So if we lost the great people that are leading it, it could go away. So we're going to put it into code and also require that they report their administrative costs. They're one of the largest departments now within DNR. And so we want to see exactly how they're spending money. I also am really concerned about housing, as we all are. It is, even a year ago when I was running for office, it was a great concern to me, but it's just gotten worse. So I am working with the Apartment Association. I know that any bills that we pass in our state have to go through that group. And they are going to work with me to make sure that rental application fees are returned to people when they apply to have a rental. Right now, we don't have that, and we want to make sure that funds are returned to people. And I've also been working with constituents in Cottonwood Heights area that are concerned about illegal short-term rentals. We have areas in some cities where they are zoned to have illegal short-term rentals, and that's great. It's a great option. But then we have neighborhoods where the city has said there will be no short-term rentals. And so I'm working to see what impacts we can make to keep that happening so that we don't have that happening where we don't want it. I am really excited to be here with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of your different bills that you are supporting and bringing to the legislative session in 2022. So now we'll move on to the next portion of our meeting, where we're going to answer some of the questions that the parents and staff of the Murray School District submitted. So to keep in the hour time that we're trying to stay in, try to keep your answers, within 3 or to 5. I know we're probably doing pretty good on time right now, but try to keep them keep them brief. So we'll start by the first question that was submitted was, how can parents most effectively be involved in the decisions that determine what is happening in our schools?
If I might, I think I would start that by saying through the PTA, which is probably one of the strongest organizations, to work within the school structure itself to be able to really work on those issues at the local level. And so I think the PTA is probably one of the key areas that we need to get the involvement with the school teachers, the parents, and discuss those issues before they become outlandish issues in my mind that are more disruptive to the public school system than it is making it more of a conducive arena for children to learn in.
May I just add, along with PTA, we're so fortunate, and Representative Bennion mentioned SITLA. Well, out of SITLA came our school community councils that happen in every school. And there are parents that serve on those community councils. They have money that comes from the permanent fund every year that's growing to be fairly considerable. And parents are essential in determining how to utilize that money to improve academics at their school. And I haven't seen anything like this across the nation. I think Utah's so lucky to have school community councils with parents.
Can I just echo my support of school community councils? While I was still teaching, they just started those. And I was the faculty representative on it. And we had something like $9,000. And I cannot tell you how many hours we spent at Olympus deciding what to do with all that money. And now, Janet, maybe you can tell me, or somebody, I mean, don't high schools get 100,000 or something?
I think it's a pretty significant amount. It may not be 100,000,
but 20 elementary schools, 20, 30,000. And
yes,
because I couldn't believe the time we spent, but it was good. We had engaged people and we had good discussion, but it's so much more now. And I just never dreamed it would be what it is now. And it's very, very helpful to schools to be able to have that for programs. And because we get letters from all the PTAs or the schools telling us what they, in our district, what they use it for. And it's really terrific.
It's an incredible program. I'm so grateful for the Margaret Bird and Karen Rupp. You know, this was started by PTA many years ago, and they are the ones that deserve the credit for our school children getting this money.
Mm-hmm.
Senator Reeby, you had your hand up a little bit ago. I apologize. Did you have a comment or want to pipe in?
Yes, I just wanted to say I'm so glad Janet Cannon is here today. She's from the State Office of Education. She's the state school board representative, and she's been such a strong advocate for so many things. And I think that the school board and the legislator have a very, very unique relationship. And I just wanted her to illustrate how we soften our legislation or how we bump it up so that we can actually meet the needs of our kids. And so Janet has been a tremendous advocate for so many kids. I just am so glad she's here with us tonight. That's all I wanted to say.
You know, yes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for thinking of inviting her. So our second question is, how do the legislators ensure the majority opinion isn't overshadowed by a more vocal minority in school safety and curriculum?
Do you want me to respond? I imagine every legislator here could, because we've experienced this in the last year or so. I don't have an exact answer, but let me give you a few things that we do. Like Senator Reeby and I are on the education committee, and we had the last few interim meetings, monthly meetings. We've had parents there that have very strong feelings, but first of all, they're rarely on topic. They come, and they're the same ones that come to school board, local school board meetings and disrupt and have complaints that aren't on the agenda. They just, and they're mostly not parents in the district. Okay. So I think one of the most important things that we can do as elected officials is to remind parents that we have a process. For example, with the continual, complaint that we're teaching critical race theory, we don't teach it. It's not a curriculum. And whenever a new curriculum is introduced, and occasionally it comes from the legislature, which is not a good idea, but take financial literacy, for example. And Janet Cannon knows this well, but it starts with the state school board creating standards for a particular program like that one. Standards and rules, because they're given that responsibility through the Utah Constitution. Then it goes to the district and they create a curriculum for financial literacy. And then those teachers who are assigned it have summer workshops. I didn't ever teach that, but many different things that we introduced new writing programs. Then we'd have summer workshops and teachers would work together and create lesson plans. So the point is that people who are claiming certain things are being taught when they're not in fact being taught, we need to remind them that we have a process to go through, and that no matter how much they say things, because I spoke at the State Board of Education, that big hearing that Janet knows that lasted for hours, that that we have a process that we follow. It isn't just teachers randomly deciding to whatever they want to teach is fine. If they do, they shouldn't. But we must stick to those processes, because otherwise we have, there's chaos and there's actual violence sometimes. So that's what I would say. Let's inform parents that there is a process and you must go through this process. The teachers union can't insert CRT or no other organization. So that would be, and we have those folks come up to the legislature and present things, and sometimes they're just not on topic. They just decide this is, if you're going to come and talk or complain or make suggestions, make sure it's relevant to what, there is time for public comment and anybody can talk about anything, but really people should know that we have a process we go through, and we have for decades, and that's what's made our public education system strong.
I would like to interject that we need you to get involved. We need you to show up at our school board meetings. We need you to show up at the legislature and say that we like our education system, we like our teachers. Frequently people are like, well, I haven't gotten any emails that say that I like this. And I always use the example of the bumper sticker on the back of that car that says, call if you like my driving. Well, I bet no one calls to say that they like the driving. They only call to say they don't like the driving. So showing up to your local school board, your state school board, and any kind of hearings we have, saying that you have really had a positive experience would help us tremendously. And secondly, the State Office of Education actually has a lot of committees that vet our standards, and we need common sense families on those committees. And frequently we have a lot of frequent flyers that are just mad and they want to, disrupt the system. And that isn't helpful for us. We are all really working hard in the system to try to create a betterment for our kids and our families. And so if we can get supportive families with kids in the schools, that would help us a lot.
Could I just add one more thing? When I taught, and my daughter teaches English, high school English, every textbook I used, every novel, every play that I ever taught was from an approved list that had come from the state board right down through the district level. And there was a parent committee that reviewed books. And I mean, I didn't ever, right now there's book banning going on or attempts to it, that of classic literature, and it's really frightening. But again, parents need to know that we follow guidelines. Teachers are people that follow rules. That's our nature. And we teach kids that. So if kids think that just people coming in and yelling and shouting and making a lot of noise and accusations are going to change things for the better, that's how kids are going to, that's how they're going to act. So this is really a critical time. And she's right. I made the statement in our committee a week ago about a particular bill of Senator Fillmore's that we didn't like. And I said to Senator, I've got nothing but negative emails about it. I haven't gotten one in support. So sure enough, they played that on the radio. They put that in the paper. And one man wrote to me and said, well, I liked his bill, so you can't say that anymore. I didn't like it. I liked it. So, but too many times we hear from the negative. We always hear that was negative, but it was a bad bill. But we hear only from one side because they organize better. The good, involved, respectful, engaged parents need to organize too, and not just assume, well, I'm not unhappy, so I don't have anything to say.
You know, there's so much misinformation that everybody has. And we're structured as a society right now that even if you don't live in the Murray School District, there are those who will try to disrupt the meetings. They will fill a lot of misinformation in there. A lot of parents are picking up on that misinformation. And probably the best thing that you can do as parents is to know the truth. As the old saying goes, know the truth and the truth will set you free. And I really believe in that. And honesty is that best policy. So you need to work with the school districts to find out what the truth is so that you can counter some of those claims that are out there of misinformation, because it's very hard to overcome that misinformation.
May I just make a comment on critical race theory? This sort of blindsided us, and come to find out, critical race theory, it was came from Harvard Law School in the 70s, so it's been around for a long time, but it is a college level curriculum. There's nothing in it that is appropriate to be taught in K-12, and it's not taught in K-12. So when people came to us and were so upset and accused us of teaching critical race theory, it was really, you know, an accusation looking for where the problem was, because it wasn't being taught in Utah schools. And I believe the legislature in one of the southern states passed a ban on teaching critical race theory in the public schools. And the governor wouldn't sign it because he said, it's not being taught. It's a problem in search of a place to land. So I hope that we don't anticipate critical race theory legislation, because Senator Davis hit the nail on the head when he said misinformation. I think many people just don't understand what it really is.
Can I just add, though, that there probably will be something, perhaps.
Yes.
Representative Chris Jansen, the one that continues to say we should audit our elections here in Utah, spreading not just misinformation. That's a nice word for lies. But this is a very frustrating time in that at that hearing at the state board, where people had 7 minutes or 10 minutes, different groups, it doesn't matter what you tell them. They've already got their narrative, and they plan and they plot. And I've seen where they tell people, go to the school board. See, that's become now ground zero. One of my former students, Julie Jackson, I encouraged her to run for Granite School Board, and she won. I campaigned for her. She'd been a teacher. She's smart. She has 4 kids in the public schools in Granite. And after 2 board meetings in Granite were disrupted by parents, mostly who didn't live there, and yelling and screaming and going up to the podium, and they had to adjourn, and they had to be escorted their car by police. She said to me, we were texting, I was watching online, I had no idea this would be, I mean, who's going to run for office? You know, and who wants to be a teacher if people get that violent? So it's up to all of us to stop this, to get the truth out. And like I say, make people follow the rules, you know, pound them out of order, you know, tell them to leave. We just can't let this happen. Local school boards, county councils, and as I say, they organize, and Canyons has had them too. And a lot of them don't live there. That's the thing that makes me so angry. All the years that I taught, all the engaged, wonderful parents who would come to parent-teacher conference, get involved in PTA and support their kids, but not try to oversee every single thing they were doing and saying. You know, teenagers don't want their parents looking at everything they do. One father I read online said, we ought to have cameras in the classroom. Do you think your kids, especially your teenagers, want to be watched? They don't even want you to know what they're doing. Now, anyway, I don't mean to go on a rant, but this is very serious these times. And I've heard other people, not just me. I was talking to a long time, a woman who writes for the Deseret News, has written education articles for years and years. And she has a daughter who's a social worker in the schools, and she's so disillusioned right now. And this woman said to me, I told my daughter this is the worst I've ever seen it. And she's been doing this for 20 years. And I've been in the legislature that long, and I taught for many years before that. So I'm not exaggerating when I say that of course we want to hear from parents. We always have. I used to have them line up to talk to me on parent-teacher conference. Somebody said, you sure must be mean. And I said, well, they're honors. Their kids are all great students. They want to come and hear how good they are. You know, I was happy to tell them, or why their kid got an A- instead of an A. So I'll be quiet now, but I get very, very passionate about this because I think public ed is under threat. And if we undermine our public education system, all this talk about our great economy and the governor's proposals and trying to bring businesses here. I went to Silicon Slope Summit. They're not going to come here if Utah gets a reputation for having a poor education system.
Thank you, Representative Moss. Let's move on to the next question. The next question is, what bills do you anticipate coming forth in regards to transgender and gender non-conforming students? Participation in athletics regardless of gender at birth?
I think we're going to see the same bill that we saw the last 2 years, last 2 sessions, trying to really discriminate against transgender individuals. I believe we're going to see that.
I also believe we're going to see that. I think, though, that it has become increasingly unpopular for these bills to be run. And we actually we were at that Silicon Slopes breakfast, and a lot of very prominent business owners said, you know, it's very hard for us to recruit people to come to the state of Utah if we are going to run bills that seem exclusionary or hateful. And so that message was heard that morning. And the other thing is we are trying to bring the Olympics here, and we are trying to bring other sporting venues here. And outside of, outside looking in, it's not a good look for the state of Utah. So I think that's influencing some of these decisions.
Could you let me turn the table, if I might, on you as well, your parents that are here listening, and the PTA members. Let me turn the table just a little bit and ask you, what are you hearing in the schools? What are you hearing around the classrooms that is concerning to you in these issues, so that we have a better understanding of where our constituency is really landing on some of these issues?
Senator, I'm the region PTA president. You had
Wonderful.
not quite gotten on yet when I talked. I'm a little hesitant to open it in this forum to that kind of discussion, just because we're already kind of running down for only like 10-15 minutes left. So what I'm going to do, if it's okay with you, Senator, is put my email and Marci's email in the chat. And then if parents would respond to us, then I will collect those and get and contact you if that works. And then we'll communicate that back to our parents if that works for you.
Thank you. I didn't want to take over the meeting. What I wanted to do was just get a little input back and what's going on, what is being heard in the classroom.
Yeah, and we'd love to give that to you.
Around your children, because I think that's important for us to look at those issues in the overall debate.
Well, that's one of the nice things about meeting in person in a room or someplace, because people come and talk to you afterwards many times and tell you about things. But when that transgender sports bill came up, I talked to the sponsor, and she teaches, she lives in Morgan. Her husband's on the school board. He was one of my students, by the way, Janet. Birkland, the Birkland kids all went to Olympus. And she coaches the junior varsity girls team. And she said they get the worst practice facilities, they get the worst schedules, they're always second class citizens. And she just she admitted she'd never heard of a single case in Utah, but she wanted to prevent it from happening because she thought it would discriminate, would hurt the girls or be unfair to the girls. And I mean, I think she truly, wants to protect, I believe her that but it's taken on a much bigger face. And then, so one, there's never been any student in Utah ever transgender trying to play girls sports. Two, the High School Activities Association has rules in place. And see, that's back to my whole point about we already have policies that a student must be on hormones for a certain length of time. And so their body weight and mass, muscle mass, and all those things are, not going to, they're still not going to be a boy, look like a boy and have the size and strength. So, it's more nuanced, it just becomes, again, a hot button issue. And frankly, I had people send me, one family in Ogden, I remember the dad and mother were doctors. They sent me a photo of their daughter who looked like she's about 14, very slender, who was transgender. And she's an ice skater. And this video showed her twirling around. She just looked beautiful. She was, she looked like a girl. And their point was, she wants to be an ice skater and maybe be competitive. And my heart goes out to kids. I want kids to be happy and to be safe and to be healthy. So it just, again, like Janet said with CRT, it's a problem. It's a solution looking for a problem.
Can I just mention what's happening at the State Board of Education?
Oh, yeah.
We have a committee, a standards and assessment committee, and we're dealing with this issue right now. The take we have on it is that we'd like to address something that might be helpful for teachers who are on the ground, facing these issues in their teaching careers. And we're trying to put together what federal laws say, what the state of Utah laws say regarding these things, and then maybe some helpful examples for teachers who are dealing with this. That's what we're working on. That's about as far as we've got. But I have multiple emails from parents on both sides of the issue, and it's something that I guess in our day and age we're going to have to deal with. I believe I read also that the Olympics has a policy regarding transgender participation in Olympic sports. So yes, there are some policies already written about it.
Right.
Go ahead, Jean.
One thing that I've been hearing more and more of, and that's the fact that parents themselves are becoming more aware and sensitive towards their children's sexual identities. And so that's the reason we see probably a little more openness in the discussion about transgender, is because of the fact a lot of parents are recognizing that their children aren't identifying with the sex that they were born with. I guess I hope that's politically correct as I state that, but they're becoming more aware, and I think, and more accepting of that. And so they expect the rest of society to respect and accept their children as well. I think that's something we have to look at and be aware of.
My daughter teaches seniors at Skyline, and she's had 2 kids in the last year or 2 that are transitioning. And she just gets an email at the beginning of the year saying, so-and-so will be going by this name, period, end of story. And the beautiful thing is that the kids are much more accepting of kids with differences now, whether they're openly gay or whatever, however they dress. And they don't have a problem with it. It's adults that are making it a problem. I want school to be a safe environment for all students.
Was it
I'd like to.
Was it
Yeah,
Senator Reeby that had something to say?
I did. I have a student in my elementary school right now who has alopecia and, causes them to have no body hair. And she's, a young lady, but she's identifying as a boy right now because I feel like maybe she doesn't have hair and that's why she wants to be a boy. I don't know. But they said as they've given her the choice, or that person the choice, she's actually become more content and she feels more at home. And so I think with our state, with having the largest rate of suicide, I think that this is something that we need to be cognizant of. It's not a matter of whether we want to delve into this, we have to. And we have to look at the mental health of our students. And when I was on the state school board with Janet Cannon, we talked about what our mission was going to be. And I'm like, I just want my kid to make it to adulthood at this point, because we have heard of so many kids, having self-harm issues that I'm like, I just want them to have a safe place and to make it to adulthood. And so some days that's how we feel, and some days that's how they feel. So I think that's really important, that we just meet them where they are and try to give them the support they need. And, and maybe they'll, figure it out themselves, but we just need to be there for them. So thank you.
All right, let's move on to the next question. What efforts are being made to work toward fully funding IDEA and Section 504 in Utah?
Well, that's super hard. We actually, some of the problems we have with fully funding IDEA and 504s and IEPs is that we have difficulties coding them, so that we actually leave money on the table because we can't code them properly. And so then we aren't getting the Medicaid funding that we need to get. As I have been a teacher for 20 years, I can tell you that our needs have grown. And it's really difficult. And so we just had this conversation in the education committee, and we were talking about the prevalence rate, which means the percentage of students that can actually say whether or not we are going to serve them. And I said, there should be no prevalence rate. We should be serving kids at a higher rate. And I would like to see us move to serving kids at a higher rate from K to 3. And then we maybe will not have such a high rate at 4 through 12, because our kids, they have disabilities when they come, they have learning disorders. And so if we can approach those and we can give them the help they need as quickly as possible, then they can maybe transition out of special ed. The antiquated thought of like, oh, I don't want my kid to be in special ed does not help anyone. It's actually a detriment to our students to wait and have to be, wait 2 years or do these interventions. We should be attacking it full on and getting in there quickly and giving them everything they need to try to figure out what's going on, give them the services they need, so that we're not getting these coping mechanisms, so that we have to unteach the coping mechanisms and then reteach them how to do stuff. So I think we're coming to a different point with that, but there is a lot of struggles with it, because there's never enough money for this. This year, we actually do have a big influx of money. And every time I meet with our school districts, I'm like, let's try everything, and let's try everything, and let's keep really good data on it. So this way, when we get to the end of 3 years and our money starts to evaporate, we can say, this is what we thought we were doing for years, but it didn't work as well as this is going to work. So I'm hoping that we're trying everything and we're trying to meet the needs of our kids. 504s, IEPs, they are so hard to negotiate. And you could give every dollar and you still might not have enough. But I wish I had a better answer than that. It's a really tough question, and it's really hard to pinpoint how to do it properly and how to get all the money we need and how to get it to the right kids. It's just really a tough, complex problem.
All right, thank you. Do we have time for another question or one more? Okay. What expectations can we have regarding funding for our schools?
I think that the new formula we have is increasing. After 30 years, we've actually just came out of the bottom. So that's exciting. Then our discussion about trust lands has actually been pretty exciting. So there are some bright spots on the horizon. I think that we really need to really keep pushing. Our changing of the money is concerning with was it 6? No, Proposition G. So that scares me. And so I think we really need to be vigilant. That proposition actually opened it up so that we can, amendment to the Constitution.
Amendment.
So that actually opened it up so that we could start bringing special ed and people with disabilities in. And, that's another big pool that we just added to our pool. So I think we really need to be vigilant. We need to be careful. We need to be watching it. But there are some bright spots on the horizon, but we still are only one from the bottom.
I
And
think one of the things I think you want to watch for, and it was presented at the Revenue and Taxation Committee this past month, and that is a tax cut, cutting the income tax, because we've got more money now than we've had in the past. And what we need to do is still stay vigilant in catching up with the needs of our students and the needs in the classroom, and make sure that the bill that we passed that said enough money would pass through to education if we change the Constitution, that promise is kept.
I don't care. Do you want to call on one of us?
Go ahead, Carol.
This is what we're facing now is competition for teachers. And again, Senator Reeve and I and Representative Bennion were at the Silicon Slopes legislative breakfast, and one of the CEOs stood up and said, "I'm happy to say I just hired seven employees who left teaching this year. And while this is great for me and my company, it's not so good for public school." Now, this is going to continue to happen. There are better jobs out there, better paying jobs. Kathleen and I tried to get more money for speech language pathologists a few years ago because they can make a lot more in clinical settings. But a friend of mine said her son's fiance, who's in Canyons District, is going to leave at the end of the year. They're going to move to Michigan because she has something like 75 kids assigned to her through special ed. And a speech language pathologist is one-on-one, We need, same thing with the social workers. We put more money into getting mental health counselors and social workers, but it's not enough. And so my daughter lost one of her top English teachers this year in her department, who was so stressed over the 2-track teaching online and in person. And then comes along this barrage of parents who are angry and disruptive and disrespectful to teachers and want to hover over and see everything they're teaching. I know history teachers say, "I'm afraid to teach." So what are we going to do? What are we doing to our public education system? One, you have to continue to increase salaries. I mean, they've gone up quite a bit in the last few years, and that's a great thing, but they don't even come close to competitive salaries in other industries. And I know they're not going to make 100, 150,000 like these tech people do, and more than that, but we do have to be, if we want to be competitive, we certainly are seeing it everywhere. I mean, you can get it. My grandson just out of high school got a job for $23 an hour recently at UPS. So he can go to school and they pay him to go to college. They'll pay tuition. So a teacher doesn't make that much, I don't think, the first year. Do you, Kathleen?
We're up to $50,000 a year in most of our districts.
If you put it hourly, but I mean,
that'd be about 25.
Yeah, people go into teaching love kids generally. I mean, if they don't, they get out. We don't do it for the money, but there are just a lot of more opportunities out there. And when they feel disrespected and under assault in this hostile environment, who's going to want to be a teacher? It's hard work.
I think that last part is more important than actually the salary. I mean, a person coming out of college isn't going to make $100,000 in most places. And we do have a great pension. We do have great days off. We have great benefits. And I think we need to start promoting that. Our schools are wonderful places to work. They're wonderful places to live. I mean, even on my worst day, some kid walks up to me, hugs me around the knees, and is like, "Oh, I got a boo-boo on my elbow," and points to her knee. And you're like, "This is a great job. How lucky we are to spend time with your kids." So I think the respect would go a long way. Taking a little bit of off our plates in our committees. I'm like, we don't want to add anything more to our teachers. Our teachers turned on a dime last year, and they educated the whole entire state. Not only did they educate the state, but they also educated parents by giving them devices, bringing home hotspots, providing them with hangouts. I mean, they were talking about the banking industry suffering. I'm like, well, go ask the teachers. They got it done in a week. So I don't know what you guys are crying about. So, you know, I made a joke about it, but we were amazing. So
Yes.
just thank your teachers. Give them some grace. You know, I mean, they've just been incredible. And I love teaching. I couldn't think of doing anything else in my life. I just love doing it.
And same with me, 33 years, absolutely loved it, the best years of my life. And I just want to make a shout out to one of your Murray High teachers, Jenny LaFortune, teaches AP English. If any of your kids have had her, she was one of my AP students, wonderful person, terrific teacher. I'm always proud when I meet somebody in Murray and they said, my kid has been in Jenny LaFortune's English class, and she said you were her teacher. So you've got some extraordinary teachers in Murray and administrators. And I mean, when I campaign in Murray, I have people tell me over and over how much they love Murray, particularly because of the school district. It's small enough that they actually can get to administrators and to the top people. Granite's huge. Try getting an appointment with the superintendent or just walking in. I think you can still do that in Murray. Walk in and say, can I talk to the superintendent? You can't do that in huge districts. So you're in a good place, Murray.
I'd like to make a comment about funding and for education, because at the federal level, President Biden has started pouring lots and lots of federal dollars given to the states to fund education to help overcome the effects of COVID. The American Rescue Plan, we've got ESSR money, we've got GEER money. So there are parameters and there are requirements around how this money can be spent. It's not ongoing money. So we have to use it wisely. We have to use it to help kids overcome the downturn in education that's happened because of the pandemic. But it is a wonderful influx of monetary help from the federal government, and we'll be meeting shortly in a study session to discuss good ways to make the best use of this money coming from the federal government. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you all for participating tonight. Thank you again to all the legislators and to Janet Cannon from the State School Board for attending this meeting. And if you guys have any further questions, send them through the chat, or you can email them to either me or Jeannette. I think that those emails were sent through the chat, and we can get those questions answered for you. And we'd just like to thank you all for coming. It was a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please come visit us on the Hill. Please
Yes,
come
thanks,
visit us on the Hill.
everyone.
We'd love to see you.
yeah,
Perfect. Thank you. Everyone have a good night.
thanks, you
Yes.
too.
Good night.